Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, reporting to you from the Overflow Room. Today, we're talking about sequels to the most iconic work of the entire 20th century, arguably. I'm referring to Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, a work that had enormous influence on other composers and other works. And this is really going to be fun because we're going to be listening to lots and lots of samples of lots and lots of very loud and noisy pieces. The Rite of Spring invented an entirely new topic, let's call it topic in music, and that is primitivism. Primitivism, music evoking primal, primitive, thudding, grunting, groaning, screeching, pre-civilized creatures and things and stuff. But the fascinating thing about music in the primitivist style, and you could argue that there were primitivist things happening well before Stravinsky got his hands on it, but nobody boiled it down to its essence the way Stravinsky did. That is, to the idea of using very simple motivic or melodic cells based on folk music, primal melodic materials, and rhythm. Rhythm and percussion. Yeah! Woomph, 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 woomph. Rhythm. That's what primitivism is all about primarily. And it's just the most, if you're a percussionist like I am, the most wonderful happening in music. Oh God, I love this stuff. And of course, a lot of the primitive stuff is also very quiet, very soft, very beautiful. But let's not kid ourselves. No one's in it for the quiet bits. We want to hear the explosions of cosmic noise. We want to see all the crazy things you can do with this unbelievably amazing creation known as the modern symphony orchestra. And Stravinsky showed us in a way that absolutely changed the course of musical history. It's just incredible, incredible stuff. Because the fascinating thing about primitivism, the paradox at the heart of most primitivist work, is that the more primitive it sounds, the more complicated the orchestration is, the more sophisticated, the more instruments you have to use, the more completely unprimitive the means is used to create the primitivist ends. And I just think that's just one of those fascinating things, because there's no relationship to the primitivist impact of the Rite of Spring and the vast symphonic orchestra, that apotheosis of civilization, the distilled essence of musical capability that you need in order to just go whump, 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 whump. That's what's so much fun about this primitivist stuff. So I want to talk about, I've got 6 here, 6 sequels to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, 6 primitive masterpieces that we're going to hear excerpts from, because I have permission to play all of them for you. And oh God, this is going to be fun and loud, really loud. And I have to start, though, by giving a plug to my own tribute to primitivism, Earquake. This was the disc I produced with my dear, dear friend, Herr Dr. Zerenmeyer Eller, and the wonderful people at Ondine Records in Helsinki who were crazy enough to take on this project, and the conductor, Leif Segerstam, and the Helsinki Philharmonic, and I play on this thing. I'm the special guest anvil soloist in John Leif's Hekla, the volcanic eruption, which is a primitive masterpiece that I'm actually not talking about in this talk, because I've talked about John Leif's separately, or Jan Leifs, or however people tell me to pronounce them in Icelandic. I really don't care. But the bottom line is, every 200 or 300 videos, I feel I should give Earquake a plug. So that's the plug. This is the world's loudest classical music CD, and some of the pieces we're going to listen to actually are on here, but not all of them. So I'll toss that over there. For our first primitive masterpiece, let's see, I have these in no particular order. I don't know. Maybe they are in kind of an order. I had them in something of an order. Yeah, let's just put this way, and then we'll do it this way. Okay, there, got it organized. Here we go. We're starting with about 10 years after the Rite of Spring, which was 1913. Not even 8 years. We get Amériques by Varèse. Oh, Amériques. Oh, it's so much fun. It has sirens going off. It's an even bigger orchestra than Stravinsky used in the Rite of Spring. It's even louder and noisier and more complicated rhythmically. Oh, it's just great. It's totally out of its mind. It's fantastic. But it establishes a slant on the Stravinskyan topic, which is we're going to see a lot of in these examples. In fact, we're going to see quite a few of them. And that's this. Stravinsky's primitive culture was naturally that of Russia. It was his own culture. He came out of the Russian nationalist school. But all of these other composers, or most of them, were not terribly, especially German composers. There was nothing primitive for them to look for at home, although you could argue, well, I'm not going there. But you know what I mean. They had to look abroad. And the abroad that many 20th century composers turned to was South America, Latin and Mesoamerica, Middle America, Central and South America, from Mexico on south. That was the primitive culture du jour, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the reason for that was because, well, first of all, nobody knew what their music sounded like. And so you could do what you wanted. That was a very helpful fact. And Amériques, the Amériques that Varèse is talking about, is this primal sort of South American, primitive culture. That's what he's trying to evoke. The sense of new discoveries there. It was the new world. And of course, decadent, bored Europeans were interested in the new world as something to reinvigorate and refresh the disgustingly decadent, tired old musical tradition of Romanticism. And that was sort of what Varèse had in mind in calling the piece Amériques. And this performance is on Naxos with the Polish National Radio Symphony Orchestra under Christopher Linden-Guy. It's very, very good. In fact, his whole Varèse series is superb. And it's on Naxos. You should really have it. If you don't, here is a little sample of Amériques, the part I like where you have 6 trumpets in unison, all playing this crazy tune that's kind of vaguely Asian sounding, actually. It could be like a Scheherazade goes to, Machu Picchu or something like that. Here you go. Wasn't that fun? Oh, yes. So Varèse is the first of our primitivist masterpieces, Amériques, that is a direct sequel and outcome of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. So let's put that over there. And next, we're going to Ervin Schulhoff, Ogelala. And Ogelala is another one of those Indian, South American sort of things, although it's also the name of the aquifer in most of the Midwest, the Ogelala aquifer. It underlies a big chunk of Midwestern America, starting with Nebraska. And apparently all of the Midwest is sinking because they're sucking water out of it so quickly. That was always one of those things I found kind of fascinating, especially when I got a speeding ticket driving home from California in Nebraska. It was the Ogelala County Sheriff, let me tell you. And the Ogelala County Sheriff drives up in his police car. In fact, let me tell you about this. I don't care if it takes a little time. So I'm driving back from grad school from Stanford to Connecticut, cross country, listening to music. It was about 4 a.m. because I spent a few hours at a hotel in Elko, Nevada, where I won $300 at a slot machine. And I was tooling along. And what you do when you're driving cross country is you follow truckers, because truckers know where the speed traps are. It's exactly the place to be. And when you're coming over I think I was on Route 80. It was 80 or 90. It was 80, I think. Anyway, you come over through Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, or wherever, near Cheyenne, and you wind up in Nebraska. And Wyoming has no speed limit. It's too big. I mean, there aren't enough police in Wyoming to police it. So you can do whatever you want in Wyoming. But of course, in Nebraska, they stick a speed trap right over the border, which is Ogelala County, because that's how they're going to get you. And a whole bunch of us, there must have been like 15 cars. We're all following this truck that's roaring along at like 85 miles an hour. And the freaking sheriff comes whizzing out, and he pulls us all over. It was very, very annoying. And so we're all waiting for our turn, to get a ticket. And I walk up to the front where the driver is, and I say to him, "What is the deal with you? You're supposed to know what's going on. That's why we're following you." And he looks at me and says, "Sorry, this is my first time." I said, "Oh, geez, it's just my luck, right?" So the sheriff's car, he's tooling around to each one of us, and he pulls up to me, and boy, these guys have a racket, because the police car said, "Ogelala County Sheriff, MasterCard, Visa, American Express," painted right on the guy goes up and he says, "Well, we take all major credit cards, and if not, you can come to the county courthouse and pay cash, and we'll give you a receipt, or you can send a check and we'll send you a bill. But please be advised that we have reciprocity with every state in the continental United States, so you will have to pay this ticket." It was $90. I remember it vividly. I said, "Send me a bill. Please, send me a bill." So he took my information and we went off on our way. And when I got back to Connecticut 2 days later, the bill was there. Now that is a racket. Anyway, Ogelala. Ogelala is a famous New World Indian name. And Ogelala is a primitivist ballet by Ervin Schulhoff, scored for mostly winds, brass, and percussion with strings that only play col legno. String players hate primitivist works. They hate them because they have to do awful things to their strings, like whack and slap and crunch. They never get to play a melody, which I think is just, serves them right. They're always so annoying, string people, when they don't have the tune. Well, try Ogelala. They spend the whole time So Ogelala has a whole bunch of movements, and the war dance from Ogelala, the Pfaffentanz, or whatever it's called, is on Earquake, that disc I showed you. So I'm going to play something different. This is an absolutely splendid performance conducted by Mikhail Jurovsky with the Staatsphilharmonie Rhineland-Pfalz on CPO. And with it, you get Bertolt Goldschmidt's Overture, The Comedy of Errors, and his Greek Suite. It's a very, very interesting disc of wonderful music. But anyway, Ogelala has something I just couldn't resist putting on. It's called the sexual dance, Sexualtanz auf Deutsch. And who could resist hearing that? This is some sex, let me tell you. Here it is. Yeah, the love theme from Romeo and Juliet. It ain't, but it's a lot of fun. This whole ballet is absolutely minimalist. It's based on a couple of tiny motives that just repeat endlessly with all kinds of clanging and banging underneath it. Wonderful fun, and yet another New World inspiration in the field of musical primitivism. And off that goes. Next, somebody who is an authentic New World guy. Silvestre Revueltas, superbly conducted by, let's see, who's doing this one? Enrique Barrios with the Aguas Calientes Symphony Orchestra in Mexico, the Hot Water Symphony. I love the name of that. This is La Noche de los Mayas, the Night of the Mayas. This was originally a film score that was later arranged as a concert work. And the finale, which is the Night of Enchantment, Noche de Encantamiento. Oh, it's so enchanted, sort of, kind of. This is also a bit that we put on Earthquake, or Earquake, whatever the heck that thing is called. And it is really extraordinary. I mean, this is a barn burner. It uses, I think, about 16 or 17 percussionists playing, just everything you can imagine all at once. Very, very cool. Here's the last couple of minutes of Night of Enchantment from Silvestre Revueltas, the fabulous Mexican composer. His years, by the way, were 1899 to 1940. And we'll talk about other works by him, too, because his music was just wonderful. Here you go. There's something to scare the neighbors. It's very primitivist, it is. Totally wonderful. Now, a different kind of primitivism. This is not South American or New World primitivism. There will be more of that, fear not. This is mechanical primitivism, the machine primitivism. And what we find, actually, from a musical point of view, and this is what makes this so fascinating, or part of what makes it so fascinating, is that what makes primitivist music primitive is its non-vocal character. The fact that it does not sound human. The personal element, that expressive idea of melody, that's an aspect, in a sense, of some kind of civilization. Certainly, it's an aspect of our own humanity, our ability to express feeling. And so to make something primitive, you want to suck that feeling right out of it. So there are other pieces that you might consider to be in their way primitivist because they are of their emphasis on inhuman, non-vocal, purely rhythmic, textural, non-melodic, elements. I mean, Mars and the Planets is primitivist in that way. And so, more than anything else, is Antill's Ballet Mécanique. This for airplane propellers and electronic buzzers and all kinds of percussion and noise-making devices. It's a study in rhythm more than anything else. And of course, because it's mechanical, it sounds primitive or primal. That's what it's based in, even though, of course, in order for something to be mechanical, it has to be rather sophisticated because it's been constructed by somebody, right? And what are some of the other sort of mechanical primitivist works? Well, there's Mossilov's Iron Foundry, very, very famous. There's Honegger's Pacific 231, the train, the railroad, things like that are based on machines, on the repetitive motion of machines. But nothing is quite like the Ballet Mécanique. And this marvelous performance is with the Philadelphia Virtuosi Chamber Orchestra under Daniel Spaulding on Naxos. And here is a minute or two of the Ballet Mécanique, a whole nother aspect of the primitivist topic, the primitivist enterprise. And once again, one that could only happen with enormously sophisticated resources, instrumental resources. Here you go. Fun stuff, isn't it? This whole disc is wonderful, by the way. I would recommend it very highly if you want to get some really cool Antill. You also get his Serenade for String Orchestra, which is Serenade for String Orchestra. It's a very different work. The Symphony for 5 Instruments, which is a very cool little piece, and his Concert for Chamber Orchestra. Wonderful works, absolutely wonderful works. So, and a primitivist masterpiece. Next, we're going back to the New World, but with another New World composer, a genuine New World master, Alberto Ginastera. And in this case, we're talking about his last work. There's some question as to the extent to which he completed it. It sounds fine to me, but there may be a missing movement in it. Popol Vuh, that is the Mayan creation myth. The Mayan creation, his Opus 44. And this performance is with, it's conducted, let's use who's actually doing it. It's number 5, here we go. The BBC National Orchestra of Wales, conducted by Giselle Ben-Dor, who is an expert in this stuff and who's done marvelous recordings of Ginastera. And in this particular case, we're going to hear the entire, Magic Ceremony of Indian Corn. La Ceremonia Mágica del Maíz. Yes, the Magic Ceremony of Corn. I don't know where Indian corn comes from. That's not the title that Ginastera gave it. But corn is corn, and it's very primitive. It's an endosperm. Ask anybody. Corn is more primitive than other grains. Here you go. Oh, was that fun? Really fun. And I recommend, frankly, all of Naxos's Ginastera recordings are wonderful with Giselle Ben-Dor. Here they are on the back. I just want to show these to you so you can take a look. There's 3 other discs, and they really are terrific. But, 3 other discs. But boy, oh boy, is this fun. Popol by, as Revueltas, pardon me, also, by Giselle Ben-Dor. 2 Ginasteras and a Revueltas. That's what we got. But that was the Magic Ceremony of the Indian Corn. Definitely a primitivist masterpiece. And what's interesting about Ginastera's primitivism is that it's primitive expressionism. In other words, it was when he went to his sort of atonal avant-garde period. And once again, we see how the primitivist topic is related to avant-garde music, to avant-garde playing techniques. One of the great exemplars of the primitivist enterprise married to avant-garde performance techniques is George Crumb. Pieces like Ancient Voices of Children or his folk song cycles, those wonderful pieces for amplified pianos and microphone things with hundreds of percussion instruments. All of that is part of the primitivist enterprise. It seeks to find something primal in all of us, something elemental, both musically and expressively. But it does it, as I keep saying, in the most complicated, sophisticated way. It's very, very, very cool. Finally, last but not least, one of the all-time fantastic, marvelous primitivist masterpieces, a piece that really gets very little attention but deserves really much more. It's quite amazing. And that's Australian composer John Antill's Corroboree. This is an Aborigine ballet, Aboriginal, based on actual primitivist or Aboriginal rituals that Antill observed and supposedly is evoking here. Now, one of the things, I mean, we say it's a primitivist ritual, that they're primitive peoples. Well, I mean, they're not so primitive. They're around now. And, we have a very, I mean, I have to say this, we have a very sort of highfalutin Western imperialist view of other cultures, particularly other cultures that have not evolved things like the 140-piece symphony orchestra or massive percussion ensembles. But the truth of the matter is a lot of what we snottily regard as primitivist is enormously sophisticated and very, very highly evolved. We slot it into the primitivist sort of ghetto because that's how we think of these things, and that's how we relate musically to things that sound like other things. But was this music primitive? I don't know. I don't really particularly think a lot of it is. I think a lot of it's enormously sophisticated, just in different ways. And that's something worth pointing out, because while I am not a cultural imperialist in that sense, I don't think that ours is necessarily better. I do think that ours is just hugely wonderful and fabulous and needs to make no apologies for evoking other cultures in ways that are syntactically synonymous with the kind of things that we like and that we do, because that's why culture's out there. It's for everybody to take advantage of and use and manipulate and play with and do things with. I don't accept any of this cultural appropriation bullshit that you hear these days. No. It's there for us to have a good time with. And I'm having a great time. I hope you're having a great time. And here is the conclusion of Antill's Corroboree. And boy, oh boy, is this a great time. This is the procession of totems and closing ceremony. And boy, after that closing ceremony, whew, I mean, everybody had better just have a snack and take a nap. Let me tell you, here it is. John Antill's Corroboree, not to be confused with George Antill's Ballet Mécanique, Don't get them mixed up, but get both of the recordings for sure. This is the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra conducted by James Judd. It's absolutely splendid. What a wonderful work. And that concludes this particular Sequels to the Rite of Spring chat, and just an unbelievable collection of music. I may do another one. There's tons and tons of sequels to the Rite of Spring. There's no limit to the amount of music that we can find that was inspired by or influenced by the Rite of Spring. That's one of the reasons Stravinsky was such an important composer. But I hope you've enjoyed this tour through the primitive jungle of modern Western, sophisticated, avant-garde, and incredibly aesthetically refined primitivist music. I just love this topic. There's so much we could say about it, but it's even more fun to listen to it. So just do that. Keep on listening, folks. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.